Good to go.
Okay, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us on this fine Tuesday evening for another Michael's Virtual Classroom. My name is Bianca from yarnspirations.com, and I'm here with your host today, the legendary Edie Ekman. You can find Edie at edieekman.com. This evening, Edie will be teaching us how to follow crochet diagrams, a perfect way to visualize pattern instructions. I will be in the chat helping you answer any questions you may have, but just a heads up that this class is being recorded. So if at any point you find us going too fast or you'd like to rewatch any part, a video of this class will be posted to michaels.com/classes within 24 hours. So with that all being said, I will pass it over to Edie to get started.
Hi, good evening, everybody. And gosh, no pressure now that I'm legendary. I don't know what that means, but I need to take a deep breath here if I'm legendary. I do want to hear in the chat where you are. I see some people came in from Virginia. I'm in Virginia, and it's like maybe going to be spring here soon. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm really excited tonight to share with you one of my favorite things about crochet, and that is crochet diagrams. We can call them diagrams, we can call them charts, we can call them symbol charts. Some people call them graphs. I don't consider them a graph, but symbol charts. So whatever you call them, I'll be saying diagrams probably, but you know what we're talking about. It's the things with the hieroglyphics, right? So tonight I'm using the crochet hexagon Afghan pattern from Yarnspirations, and we're going to be following this chart right here to start with, but in general, I'm going to be talking about some other symbols as well. So this is the pattern that we're following, and I'm going to be talking about that on the screen. So let me get my camera on here. And of course, I had it ready. And I have to tell them it's okay for me to record here too. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to just for a moment show you the, this is the motif. And if you look at the chart next to the motif, you can see how the shape of my chart mimics the shape of the motif, which I think is one of the best things about crochet diagrams, because you can see right off exactly what shape you're going for. So if it's worked back and forth, it would, just be back and forth rows. But here I can see right away it's a hexagon. So even if I didn't know this was called a crocheted hexagon Afghan, I mean, there's a little clue there. But if I had no idea what I was doing and I only had this much of the pattern, I still have a really good idea of what it is I'm making and what it should look like. There will always be a stitch key, always, always, always. And the trick with reading charts, diagrams, whatever, is just to understand that each symbol represents a stitch. And the stitch, I'm going to do this the old school way. I'm actually going to draw on a piece of paper rather than being super fancy. So if I draw that, everybody knows that is an A, right? And if I draw this, you also know it is an A, even though it looks different. But we don't have any trouble understanding that that's an A, right? We call it A. And if we're pronouncing it, we might pronounce it A or E, or A or A, right? And when we're learning to read, we don't necessarily panic over that, right? So let's talk about crochet symbols. These are letters. I'm going to draw that. Well, that's a chain. And if I have a bunch of them together, doesn't that kind of look like a chain? So all I have to know is if this symbol right here is a chain symbol and I put a lot of them together, there I go. I have 4 chains. Single crochet looks like that, but sometimes single crochet is written as an X. So both of those are single crochet symbols, but they're just the same way that an A and an A are both A's, right? They're just different ways of writing single crochet. If I wanted to do a half double crochet, it would look like that. Or a double crochet is going to look like that. But you know what? A double crochet might also, this little hash mark here that happens, that can also go a little bit sideways like this. So both of those are double crochet, just kind of a different font, right? So I think the little hash mark on the double crochet reminds me of how many yarn overs I'm going to do before the stitch starts. So if I wanted to do a treble crochet, it's going to be a little bit taller and it's going to have 2 hash marks. So anybody want to guess what that would be? This is going to be a double treble. Okay, so those are kind of the basics. Then we also have a slip stitch, which is like a chain. Sometimes it's drawn like this. It's like a chain, but it's, into something. So you have the slip stitch. So those are going to be your basic symbols. And it's the way we arrange them that tells us what it is we're going to make or how we're going to make the thing. But I do want you to understand that the difference between this and this is just in the font, basically, right? Same thing with the single crochet symbols. They're just slightly different ways to write the same thing. You will always have a stitch key. Whenever you have a chart, there's going to be a stitch key which will define it. The other really cool thing about diagrams or charts is that you can read the pattern in any language. So I have a whole bunch of Japanese stitch dictionaries. I don't read Japanese, I don't speak Japanese, but I can follow the charts because I know what the symbols mean. And they do a good job of showing me what the symbols mean. So even though I can't read Japanese, I can read the symbol chart. So you can read them in any language, right? Unlike trying to read text instructions. So, all right, that's a lot of talking. Let me share my screen here and let's talk through this before we start crocheting it together. I'm going to bring that pattern up here and flip over here to the second page. So I'm not at the moment even going to worry at all about the text instructions. I just want to look at what's going on with this chart. So you can see I've got my stitch key. I have a chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double, double, double crochet 2 together, and double crochet 3 together. These terms that I'm using, so single crochet, half double, double, and so on, that's American crochet terminology. Some of you may know that in the UK, they are one step higher, I guess you would say, or we're one step lower, however you want to call it. So when somebody in the UK sees this symbol and does the thing that we call single crochet, they're going to call it double crochet. So in the UK, this would be defined as double crochet, but it's still the same stitch. So that's another benefit of diagrams, is that never mind what we call it, when you see this symbol right here, you're going to do the thing that gives you an American a single crochet. And hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to check the chat for just a second now, because I want to make sure. I see somebody had a question, and Bianca, I don't know what the question was.
Sure, yeah. So you mentioned being able to read charts using different languages. How does this, or if at all, does it translate to knitting? Would there be a kind of different stitch key?
Yes, so these are specifically crochet symbols. So this is for crocheting. Knitters have their own way of charting things, and that would be a topic for a different night, because they are completely different symbols. So that's a great question. And hopefully maybe we can do one on knitting charts sometime. So I'm actually a huge fan of knitting charts as well. So, but in this case, we're just going to be sticking to the crochet symbols. Hopefully that was the answer you were looking for. So as I look at this chart here, whoops, sorry, trying to make it bigger. Let's just not even worry about the text at all and see if we can talk our way through here. We're going to start down here in the center, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chains and a slip stitch. That tells me that I'm going to do chain 6 and slip stitch to join in a ring, right? And then here's round 1. I'm going to, can you see hopefully you can see the little hand there that's pointing. I can make this, I can make it a little bigger maybe, or let's see what might be more helpful in terms of being able to see things. So here I am, I'm going to chain 3. And then I have this symbol, double crochet 2 together. Well, let me go back to my symbol chart here. There we go. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. So if this is a double crochet, another thing I didn't mention is that the angle or the place that the base of the stitch is, tells us where we're going to put our hook. So if, for instance, I had something that looks like this, that's 3 double crochets in one spot, or in one stitch, or in one chain space, or whatever. So that tells me I have 3 tops of a stitch, but all their feet, all their bases are in the same place. Well, in the same way that I have that, I can also have something that looks like this. Can you see that that is 3 double crochets that are in the same spot, but they're finished off together? Let me draw that again, or maybe I can do 2. There's a double crochet, but look, there's another double crochet, but there's just 1 top to them. That shows me that their base is in the same spot and they're finished off together. That's double crochet 2 together. And this is double crochet 3 together. So that's what I'm ending up with when I look at my diagram. This right here is double crochet 2 together, then I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to have double crochet 3 together, double crochet clusters, and I'm going to go around in this direction because I'm right-handed. So as a right-hander, I'm going to be working in this direction. So that's counterclockwise. Now, if I'm left-handed, it's actually, charts are usually written for right-handers, but left-handers work in the other direction. Okay, so you're probably going to be going around in this direction. It's going to be slightly different. It's helpful if you can flip the diagram so that you're seeing it, reading it in the other direction. But right-handers are going to work counterclockwise and left-handers are going to work clockwise. But you're going to have to, left-handers, you're going to have to flip the beginning and end of the round because it's going to, you're going to want it to end up over on this side. So as a right-hander, I'm going to go around and work in this direction. All of those clusters are worked into that beginning chain space, right into the ring. And I can look at this. I don't have to be a slave to the pattern because I can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clusters. Okay, so I can do that. Well, let me go ahead and get started doing that first round. And we tried to get it where you could see the chart at the same time, but we couldn't make that work. So what did I say? It's chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and join with a slip stitch to form a ring. And then I have chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And then that double crochet 2 together. Well, here's how that symbol makes sense. I start a double crochet, yarn over, go into the ring, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. But now I stop before I finish that double crochet because I need to do double crochet 2 together. So I start another one, yarn over, pull through 2, and then I yarn over and finish them off together. And how this looks like this diagram is that I have got that chain 3 and then the double crochet 2 together right here. Then it tells me I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then do a 3 double crochet cluster. So all of that's going into the ring. Now at this point, there's 1 partial, there's 2 partial, there's 3 partial. At this point, I don't have to pay any attention to either the chart or the text because I have already put in my head what it is I'm doing. I can look at the chart and see what it is I need to accomplish. I need to get these clusters and I have 3 chains between them. So those of you who have heard me teach before know that I am really big on understanding what's going on with the pattern and then not being a slave to what's written, just understanding where it is you're going with it. So you're not having to do step by step. Well, you are having to do step by step, but you know what the overall picture is that you're going for. So here, I'm going to stop because I've been talking and see how many I have. I have that beginning cluster, then 1, 2, 3, 4. Need to do another one for a total of 6 clusters. This last cluster is going to be a little bit different though. I'm going to do the cluster and then stop and take a look at what happens next. Let me share my screen because I really want to zoom in on this a lot. So what I've got here at the end of round 1, there's my last cluster. I have a chain and then a half double crochet. And that half double crochet right here is acting like a chain 3 space. You see, I have a half double crochet and a chain 1. That whole thing is acting like a chain 3 space. And then I'm going to start the next round by doing a chain 3 and another beginning cluster here. So you may not know what that means, but you can clearly see where that stitch goes. That half double crochet is lying down sideways, and I'm going to put the bottom of that stitch into the top of this cluster. So we're actually learning some other things here. So I'm going to do chain 1, move this out of the way a little bit, and then I'm going to do a half double crochet into the top of that cluster. When I do that, that half double crochet is now kind of lying sideways, but my hook is right there in the middle of that chain space. So then I can do chain 3 and another double crochet 2 together cluster. Okay, so then I can look at my chart again on round 2 and see that, oh, well, all I have going on here is I'm putting clusters in each chain space and I have chain 3s between them. Done. Don't have to look at the pattern anymore. I'm going to do a chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then a cluster in the next space. So, you know, I can talk to you or I can watch TV or whatever because I don't have to pay attention to the pattern at this point. For this whole round, I know where I'm going. So another thing I want to point out about round 2, you'll notice if you have printed this out in color that it's in blue and round 1 was in black. That is actually done in this particular pattern just so that you can keep track, your eye can track what round is what, right? So that you know that you're on round 2 and the stitches are blue. It doesn't have anything to do with the color of the yarn. So right now we're doing the whole thing in a solid color. Sometimes you'll have a chart where the rounds are in different colors and they are indicating what, oh, sorry, you know what? I was talking wrong. I have 2 clusters in each one. Sorry, read that wrong. Can't talk and do this at the same time. So even pros make mistakes, right? There are 2 clusters in each of these. So I'm going to do that. Some of you were probably yelling at me and saying, no, it's 2 clusters in each one. So back to the colors. Some charts are going to have different rounds with different colors, indicating that you're changing color. So you just have to read the chart carefully, see if there's a key that tells you about the color. In this case, it doesn't say anything about color, and it's not saying that the second round is done in a different color. So you just use your judgment there and realize that that's just so you can see which round is which. It makes it easier to read the chart. Sometimes charts will have all the same color, but they'll say work round 1 in color A and work round 2 and color B, whatever. So not all charts are going to be exactly the same, but they have a lot of things in common.
Edie, if we have a question in the chat here.
Mm-hmm.
So some folks are just having a bit of a tough time kind of identifying when you should be stitching into the chain, when you should be stitching into the space. How do you kind of figure that out based on the diagram?
Right. So great question. The default on a chart, let me go back, let me share the screen. So there's an easy answer to that, and that is in almost every case, when there's a stitch over a chain space, you're working into the chain space. Just like when you're reading text instructions, anytime, like here, you have the cluster that's over the chain space and another cluster over the chain space, you almost never work clusters into chains themselves. You very, very seldom work into the actual chain. That's the exception rather than the rule. So you can assume that all of these are worked into chain spaces unless they're called out and said otherwise. Or sometimes the base of the stitch will actually go down into the, like, be touching into the center of the chain. But again, that's really rare. You just assume that it's into the chain space. Just like if you are reading a text pattern, it's going to almost always say work into the chain space rather than into the chain, because that would be really hard to kind of dig down in there and work into the chain itself. So thank you for asking that, and do please keep, I can't keep track of the chat, so Bianca has to call it out to me. Let me talk about these clusters just in case you have missed that part of it, since we're actually not talking about clusters, but there are a lot of clusters here. I think of the clusters as being partial stitches that are finished off together. So if this is 3 double crochets together, I'm going to start by doing a yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and stop there, because the next yarn over and pull through would finish my double crochet, but I'm going to stop because I don't want to finish that double crochet. Then I'm going to do another yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and stop. And then one more time, yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. So what I have done here is I've done 3 partial double crochets, but I haven't finished them yet. Can you see that their feet are all in the same space? They're in the same chain space. That's why they come together at that point, like I drew here. They're coming together at a point because their feet are all in the same place. But when I do a yarn over and pull through, their heads all are in one stitch. So those 3 stitches are still just 1 stitch at the top. So I've got to work myself around here to the last space and see if you can look ahead and see if you can figure out what's going on at the end of this round.
As you're finishing up your round there, we have a question on just how to kind of end your round, connect, and go into the next.
Okay. Okay, and we're about to do that. So perfect timing, perfect timing. All right, I'm gonna come back to my diagram here so we can look at that. So here I am. Oops. It won't go away. Try this again. Can you hear it chirping at me? Come on, come on. All right, so here I am. I'm at the end of round 2. I've done my cluster, my chain 3, and now I need to put another cluster into that beginning space. Remember when I ended with a stitch, I ended with a chain and a half double crochet. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to end with a cluster in that beginning space and then do a chain 1 and a half double crochet. So here's what that looks like. And come back here. All right, so here I have one more cluster to do. Let's take a look. Can you see that I have 2 clusters in that space, 2 in this one, 2 in this one, 2 in this one, 2 in this one, but I only have 1 in this one. I need to put 1 more right here. So I'm going to do chain 3, and then I'm going to put a cluster in that beginning space so that I end up with a total of 2 clusters. Finish it off together. And now I need to end that round. Well, I'm missing that chain 3, but if I do a chain 3, my hook's going to end up over here, but I want my hook to end up in the center of that space, not way over here. So to do that, I do a chain 1 and then a half double crochet. You see on the chart that half double crochet is lying sideways. Just because I say the symbol looks like this doesn't mean it's always up and down, right? It can be all sorts of different ways, angled different ways. So in this case, I'm going to do a half double crochet, which is a yarn over, and I'm going to put that half double crochet where the base, where the bottom of the half double crochet is in the diagram. And in that case, it's right there in the top of that cluster. Okay, so I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop and then half double crochet, yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, and I see somebody had asked, is this a beginner class? I think this was set out as an intermediate class. Bianca, I think you can maybe address that, but that, you know, it's, I'm sure that there are classes for beginners as well. So all right, here I am at the end of round 2, and round 3 is very similar. So let's go back to the chart because that's what we're talking about. I finished round 2. Now here I am on round 3. I'm going to do another 3 double crochets and a 2 double crochet cluster. And then I'm going to have a chain 3. And now I can also do a little bit of looking ahead. Here I have 2 clusters in the next space, then 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, then 1. This is going to be creating my corners here. So I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to do a cluster, chain 3, cluster, all in that space. So chain 3, which brings me up to the beginning of the next round, and I'm going to put the double crochet 2 together right there in that same space. Do you see that the half double crochet and the chain 1 created a space? So I'm going to do that. Whoops. 2 double crochets, then chain 3, and in the next corner I'm going to put, or in the next space, sorry, I'm going to put I have to look at my chart here. I'm going to put 2 clusters with a chain 3 between them. Then another cluster in the same space. Then chain 3. And then just 1 cluster. and then chain 3, and then 2 clusters. So it takes me a minute to go around here. So Bianca, if people have questions, I can answer as I work.
We do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So we're wondering, let me just find it here. Victoria is asking, when I make circles, the sides always curl in. Is there any way to prevent this?
Yes. So the trick with making motifs from the center out, whether it's circles or anything else, is you have to increase as you go out, and the height of the stitch that you're increasing the stitch that you're increasing has a different height, and you have to increase more for taller stitches. That's the general rule of thumb. I mean, I could go into details, but that's probably another class. But basically, if it's curling, you aren't increasing enough. If it's sort of cupping in, you're not increasing enough for the height of the stitches as you go out from the center.
We'll put that on the class suggestion list.
Yeah, so any other questions while we're... It takes a little longer once you start getting more rounds, right? So, but this round also, once you figure out where you're going with it, you hopefully don't have to think too hard. And I'm going to stop and check myself, because when I talk and crochet at the same time, you know what can happen. So let me just check myself here. I have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So I think I'm doing okay. And 3 chains between each. And go ahead and look ahead to the next one and see if you can see what's going to be happening there. It looks like we're going to have a bunch of double crochets in chain spaces. And you can also see that there's some double crochet corners where we'll be increasing at the corners. And you know it's a hexagon because there's 6 corners. So 6, the increases are spaced, evenly spaced at 6 points. That's what makes it a hexagon.
We also have a question just on what kind of hook are you using?
This is a Susan Bates hook. This is an US H 5 millimeter, and it's got a nice grip to it. This is one of my favorite hooks. I have one of these plain hooks that has worn, it was blue and is worn off the entire, like it's so old, I've worn off all the blue. Somebody says I need to check and see if I'm off. I probably am off because I've been talking. So let's see, I started with 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know, I think I'm okay. Got 2 more clusters in this last corner. And then that round ends in a way that should look familiar. Get these clusters and come back to sharing my screen so we can look at that chart again, because after all right, here I'm ending with the same thing. I have 2 and then chain 1 and a half double crochet here, and then I'm going to chain 3 to begin the next round. But before I start, I want to show you something, because I found this out this afternoon. I was like, oh, this is a great teaching point. Does anybody notice anything weird going on in round 4? See that chain right there? You see this random chain right there? That's not really supposed to be there. It's kind of an artifact, if you will, left over from when whoever it was created the chart. And, that was probably copied and pasted or something. But you can tell, if I zoom out a little bit, you can tell that chain 3 doesn't belong there. There's not a chain 3 in any other corner. It doesn't make any sense right there because the chain, here's where our hook is. Here's where our chain 3 is. So, we're just going to chain 3. We're going to work around this and we're going to ignore this when we get to it. Let me see if I can just like make it. Whoops, that's going to make them all black. I don't want to do that. So, but of course I don't know how to undo it. So let's turn. So we're going to ignore this one right here. Okay. Just like, yeah, we don't want that there at all. Okay. So ignore that chain 3. We're just going to be working here. As I work around, I can see I'm going to start with a chain 3 and a double crochet in this same space. And then I'm going to put 3 double crochets into the next space. And then here we are at a corner. We're going to put 2 doubles, chain 2, 2 doubles, all in that space. But you can see how the corners are starting to appear. You see how that looks very corner-ish? Because you can see where the base, where the foot of the stitch or where the hook goes. 3 doubles in these spaces, and then in each corner, we're putting 2 doubles, chain 2, 2 doubles, all the way around. At the end of the round, we'll put a double right here in that beginning space. So let's do that. All right, I sort of forgot where I was here. I'm going to have to do a chain 1, do another half double right there in the top. There I am with my half double, my chain 3, another double in that space that I just created, then 3 doubles in the next space. And then we reach a corner and I can see that it's 2 doubles, chain 2, 2 doubles. And then here I am along the side. And because I don't like to have to be a slave to the pattern, I go, okay, I'm going to put 3 doubles in each of these side spaces. Especially if you're making a gazillion of these for an Afghan, you want to kind of start to memorize what it is you're doing. And then here I am at another corner. And I am not going to actually finish this. I'm going to show you the finished one because there's some other things I want to show you. And I don't think you necessarily need me to show you that all the way around. The next round is going to be, let me share my screen again. The next round is simply going to be single crochet in every stitch around, but in each corner space, you're going to put 2 single crochets, these 2 single crochets right here. So you end up then with the, a solid edging around all of this. Okay. So that is how you would read this chart, but I wanted to share with you another chart because sometimes charts look different from this. And I can also talk more about this one. All right. But the other one I wanted to show you, this is just a back and forth diagram from another Yarnspirations pattern. And I'm going to share that screen with you so you can see it up close. So on this one, and you can see it's just a washcloth, so pretty simple, but I wanted to show you what a chart can look like when you're working back and forth, because we had been working in the round. That was another thing about charts. It can show you which way you're working. But in this case, you can see I'm starting with a foundation chain. I'm doing a chain 1, and then putting a single crochet in the second chain from hook. Say my hook's going to be up here. There's the second chain from hook. Then I would skip 1, 2, and put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double crochets into that chain. Now, the question before had been, do I work into the chain or do I work into the chain space? Well, this is a foundation chain, and that's a little bit different. You have to work into the foundation chain itself. So into this chain right here, that's where you're going to be working when you're working into a foundation chain, because you have to. There's not a chain space to work into at that point. There is only the foundation chain there to work. So that's going to be working right into that chain right there. Then you're going to skip 1, 2, and put a single crochet in the next chain right here, and then skip 1, 2, and put another 5 double crochets into the next stitch. This is probably a pattern stitch that many of you are familiar with, but you can see it tells you how many to skip, and it tells you exactly where to put your hook or where to put all those stitches. Whoops, I'm sorry, I was trying to make it bigger again. So you can see exactly where you're supposed to put those stitches. So you work all the way across. If you had the right number of chains, your last single crochet goes into the last chain. Then you're going to turn. Now notice that round 1 was worked, because we're right-handed, sorry, left-handers, you're working in this direction. When you turn, you're going to be working in this direction. Now you're still working in the same direction, but your work turned, but you're going to read it from left to right. Now, left-handers, you're going to actually start over here, and your first row is going to be worked in this direction, and your second row is going to be worked in this direction. And it's something that at first you may have to think about a little bit, but after you've practiced it a while, you're going to get used to it. I'm sorry about that. I know that you lefties live in a right-handed world and you're used to having to flip things. And so sorry, but just knowing that I think is helpful. Your number 1 is going to be here and your number 2 is going to be here. So back to reading this chart. I've worked row 1. I'm going to turn, do a chain 3. And you can see that I'm going to put 2 double crochets into that very first single crochet. And then I'm going to skip these 2 double crochets and put a single crochet into the center double crochet of that previous shell right there. And then my next shell set of 5 double crochets goes right here into that single crochet. You can really, really see where each of these goes. And when I turn and do it ends with 3 double crochets in that last single crochet. When I turn, do a chain 1 to get up here to the beginning of row 3. The first single crochet goes in that first double crochet, and then I put a shell in the single crochet. So I'm working back, forth, back, forth. In this case, right here, just looking at this, I can't tell whether this is 2 different colors or not. I would have to read the pattern itself to find out whether they're wanting me to change colors or whether it's all done in one color. I don't know. But in this case, I would say I'm guessing that it's just all one color. Now, I'd have to go back to the pattern itself and see what's going on with the pattern to see if it gives me instructions about, okay, it says carry color not in use alongside of work. And it tells me that the stripe pattern is 2 rows A, 2 rows B. All right, so I have to take that information with me when I come over and look at this chart. And so this chart has nothing to do with the colors. You're going to work rows 1 and 2. That's going to be one color. And then you're going to change colors and work rows 3 and 4. Okay, so you can't always take the chart just exactly as written. You have to know what else goes with it, right? So you're also going to need to read the instructions to see what else goes along with that chart. Okay, So let me stop for a second and see what questions we had about that or about the other one.
So we do have a question. It kind of goes back to you mentioning, again, reading patterns in different languages. When you're doing a pattern, say a Japanese one, do you find many differences in the symbols, or is it kind of standard across globally?
These symbols are mostly based on the Japanese symbols. So the Japanese symbols are very, very close to this. Russian symbols are somewhat different. And so if you're reading a Russian chart, you're going to find that they are somewhat different. But mostly I've had Spanish and Mexican patterns and Japanese patterns and American patterns. They're all pretty close to being the same thing. You do have to remember, though, if you're looking at, if this were published in England, okay, the definition for this symbol right here would say double crochet. You would still make it by inserting your hook, doing a yarn over, pulling up a loop, yarning over and pulling through two. In other words, you would make it like you make a single crochet, but they just call it a double crochet in England. So it would be defined as double crochet, but the meaning of the symbol stays the same, even when the name of it changes. I hope I explained that well enough to make sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Let me see here. I mean, a lot of great feedback on the class so far.
So I can go ahead.
So if you have a second, we were just hoping you could show us joining again or connecting your row.
Okay.
So when connecting the rounds, are we putting the half double crochet in the chain 3 or on the top of the first cluster?
Okay, great question. It's in the top of the first cluster. Let me rip out what I was doing so I can get back to that spot. So if you look at the diagram, pull that diagram up. If you look at the diagram, you can't quite tell. It does look like it's in the top of it's in the chain, but you wouldn't ever join in under a chain space when the chain space is being treated like a double crochet. Can you see that chain 3 is acting like a double crochet? So you would never want to put your hook under, let me get back here. Chain 1, you would never want to put it under that chain 3 because that would just pull it out too far. You're just going to want to put it in the top of the cluster. So whatever you think the top of the cluster is right here, because it's that one stitch is all one stitch, or sorry, that was supposed to be a half double. So just like where it's where you would put the slip stitch if you were going to do a slip stitch. So I'm doing a yarn over, I'm going in the top of my cluster and doing that half double crochet. So there's one thing I wanted to point out about this particular pattern if you are reading the text of the pattern. So what I have shown you, we've gone strictly from the diagram because I wanted you to see that you can go strictly from the diagram. What I did find out when I was working on it, though, is that there is an error in the definition of the double crochet 2 together, double crochet 3 together. So this definition is not correct, and Your Inspirations will be correcting it. The way to do double crochet 2 together and double crochet 3 together is what I showed you. So that would be like doing a partial double crochet, 2 partial double crochets and finishing them off together, or 3 partial double crochets and finishing them off together. So again, that would be, it would be yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, then stop, do that again, yarn over, go in, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and one more time for double crochet 3 together, yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. So there I have 3 partial double crochets, then yarn over and pull through everything. So I just wanted to point out that that definition could confuse you a little bit because it's not quite right. You know, unfortunately, we do all we can to make sure patterns don't have errors, but sometimes they do. So always use your judgment when you are, you know, looking at a pattern, just like when we were, I was showing you that diagram and there was that random chain 3. Use your judgment. You know this stuff. Probably more than you think you do. You can always ask somebody and say, do you think this looks right or does it sound right? To see if it really does make sense, because it can be really hard to get every single little detail, but especially on something like that diagram that had the random chain 3 on it, that's pretty clearly an error. And I've drawn charts sometimes where I was like missing a chain 3 space, but it would be super clear, right? So like if on, let me change this here. If on this diagram, for example, there was a missing chain 3, if that little piece of black chain 3 wasn't there and it was everywhere else, wouldn't you just know what to do? Like you wouldn't have to stop. You could figure it out for yourself. And I think a whole lot better than you can if there's a missing chain 3 in text, right? Like if I'm having to keep my eye on what's going on in text like this and there's a missing chain 3, I might get pretty confused. But if it's missing on a diagram, I can see right away, oh yeah, that, you know, I'll just draw it in because I can see that, I can tell that. Okay. So that's what I had, and I'd be delighted to answer questions, other questions, if I've missed anything.
A lot of great feedback on your scarf and the lamb behind you as well.
Okay, thank you. Yep, these are both my designs. You can find me at edieekman.com and on Ravelry, and they're all designs that are for sale. So you can buy the patterns and crochet them yourself. Thank you.
Awesome. Do you recommend kind of reading through the diagrams before you start working, or?
Yeah, I like to take a look, just like we sort of talked through it or thought through it a little bit, maybe not step by step, but just to kind of get an overall idea of like, okay, I'm going to be doing some clusters. It's going to be a hexagonal shape. It's got some single crochets and some double crochets. And you know, sometimes it might be, I don't know what that symbol means. Let me explore it a little bit. So just kind of like you might read a recipe through or look at a pattern first, just to kind of get a general idea. Or if you're, I don't know, I was going to say, I used to say, you know how when you look at a map and you kind of want the general idea of where you're going, but I think everybody just uses turn-by-turn directions on GPS now. And that's how they end up in the middle of a field. So maybe you should try to check your check your crochet chart and pattern before you really get started.
So we're also wondering, so does the joining of the squares kind of appear on the diagram, or those kind of steps?
They can. In this example, it didn't. We chose a pretty simple example. Let me see if I can real quickly pull up. I may not be able to do it because I may not have one handy, but you can have some that are pretty, yeah, I don't have one really handy. You can have some that are pretty complex and have all the join as you go stuff. I have, as a matter of fact, both this pattern and the daisy lace shawl pattern that you see back there are both join as you go, and they're fully charted with arrows to show you where you're going to be doing those joins. So that was, you know, that's a little bit beyond what we're doing on this basic thing, but yeah, they can be much more complex than what we had. And they can also show you, you know, where those join as you go joins would go. And as far as I'm concerned, there's certain patterns, especially like that daisy lace shawl back there, that really can only be done with following a chart. So the pattern is written out as well, but the people who made that one were like, oh, thank goodness you had a diagram, because once I figured out what was going on with the diagram, it all made perfect sense, whereas all those words were a lot harder to understand. So I would just say, start easy, start slow, get a pattern where there's the chart and the text and compare them. Try covering the text and see if you can follow the chart. And if you can't, then go back to the text and see if you can get a little explanation and then go back. So you can wean yourself off just the words and go into diagram mode if you want, or ideally you have both.
Okay, awesome. This is great. I have learned a lot. I learned that I was joining wrong all this time. So yeah, great class, really.
Okay, great. Nice to see everybody. And I'll see everybody next time. Thank you all. I hope to see some of you online at some point.